CNN are clearly rattled by the Joe Rogan treatments for coronavirus. Why do they keep this story alive? Why do they refuse to apologise for their potentially libelous framing of Joe Rogan's individual, autonomous, personal actions? Let's have a look at the relationship between media, Joe Rogan, and Big Pharma and see if we can see any hidden narratives that we ought to explain. Hello there, you 4 million miracles, you. As I always have to say at the beginning of videos of this nature, I have no opinion on how you handle your medical life. I don't care about medical procedures, recommended, not recommended. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a scientist. This isn't even my real jacket. You decide for yourself what you think is the right thing to do and the right thing to think. Now let's get on with looking at this interesting story in the Washington Post. Let's accept that it's become a saga, that there's been numerous videos made about it. There's been a lot of ink spent, a lot of digital screen time spent on discussing, analysing and trying to understand this issue. Let's firstly lay the story out and then I'll give you my opinion on what could be influencing the direction of travel vis-a-vis CNN's adamant stance. On September the 1st, CNN host Erin Burnett said, controversial podcast host Joe Rogan, they've already given him the adjective controversial. What does that mean? Controversial as opposed to popular, successful, well-regarded, all different things that you could say. This is the beginning of the framing. This is an important story, I would say, not in particular because of the subjects, but because of what is revealed about the manner, nature and inclination of storytelling techniques. And I'm trying to avoid the word propaganda. Joe Rogan, she continues, has railed against vaccine requirements, says he has COVID and took a drug intended for livestock. She articulated similar descriptions 2 additional times before interviewing a doctor and noting that the drug is prescribed for people as well. The same day, CNN host Anderson Cooper said one of those drugs he mentioned, ivermectin, is something more often used to deworm horses. As many of you have said in the comments, it's like if Joe Rogan ate oatmeal, is Joe Rogan eating horse food? It's about framing. It's not, as CNN seem to be saying in their own statement, it's not about whether or not medicines can have various applications. It's about the framing of those applications. If you particularly and specifically emphasize that it's a veterinary medicine, what you're saying is it's not for humans, and that's a critical and pejorative perspective. Also that day, Don Lemon said controversial podcast host Joe Rogan tested positive for COVID and is taking several medications, including a drug meant for deworming livestock. So it's, again, the ongoing association of controversial and Joe Rogan and the ongoing association between the drug in question and livestock. That's 2 sort of amalgams. On the 3rd of September, CNN political commentator Bakari Seller said, I think the unfortunate part about all this is you have individuals like Joe Rogan, for example, who don't want to take an experimental vaccine but will take horse dewormer. And on the September the 4th, anchor Jim Acosta played Rogan's disclosure video and said, in case you missed it, Joe Rogan said ivermectin. Yes, that's the deworming medicine made to kill parasites in farm animals and weirdly is being promoted by right-wing media figures and even some politicians as a COVID treatment. It seems like the longer the story ran, the more pejorative the language becomes. There's a reason for reciting these transcripts. They turn up a consistent formulation from multiple CNN voices that surely wasn't a sober recitation of the facts. By highlighting that ivermectin is a horse dewormer and downplaying that ivermectin has important uses for people, CNN facilitates a certain assumption among its viewers. After hearing Rogan's concerns about how CNN cast the issue, Gupta said they shouldn't have said that. Given that a prominent CNN personality agreed with a strong critique of his own colleagues, we placed the matter before the network's PR department. They issued this statement. The statement, I think, is really fascinating because this is a news network that has a great deal of communicative bandwidth, a great deal of power and reach. And the choice they made at this point, where they didn't use it as an opportunity to be honest, to diffuse the situation. Remember as well, by the way, that the whole point of a society is for us to look after one another, create successful systems. If you're in a position of significant power, like a news broadcaster, then surely the response to a pandemic ought be, how do we get to resolving this situation as quickly and effectively as possible. Now, in order to have that perspective, there can be nothing else at play. There can be no financial obligations that you have as an institution, no agenda or requirement for viewers or listeners or readers, no affiliation with other groups, organizations, no funding discrepancies. So think about what's required in order to achieve what surely we are aiming for, a fair, decent society where all of us can actualize, become who we really are. And when there are big social problems, we have the power to address them socially. When there are individual problems, we have the collective intelligence to analyze it critically. What we're creating here is a kind of ubiquitous hysteria, a totalitarian idiocy. That's what's created when institutions with power behave irresponsibly, or if not irresponsibly, in accordance with principles that are not transparent or easily viewed and critiqued. Here's the statement from CNN. The heart of this debate has been purposely confused and ultimately lost. It's never been about livestock versus human dosage of ivermectin, right? That already doesn't sound that honest, does it? Because of the amount of times that they talked about livestock. They didn't at any point go, even though this drug is used for animals, it's also used for humans, so it's not important whether it's livestock versus... That was what they were really amplifying. So it's disingenuous. They're opening straight off the bat, lying. The issue is that a powerful voice in media, right now we're getting somewhere, powerful voice in media. CNN do not like no one in media likes Joe Rogan having the amount of power that he has, that he doesn't have to be beholden to the kind of same commercial interests, that he can't be controlled, curtailed, limited, diluted in the traditional manner. Why do you think that for 50, 60 years, as long as there's been the kind of media that we've had, it's been controlled in particular ways? Regulation from government, funding from private interests. These are the two pincers that close down, that squeeze information into manageable little tubes of data that serve the interest of the powerful. We always maintain that little equation in mind. How does this serve the powerful? How does this serve the powerful? If someone says something that potentially is dangerous or disruptive to the intentions of the powerful, that person will be censored. If they can't be censored, they'll be criticized, slammed, slurred, smeared. Joe Rogan, powerful voice in the media, who by example and through his platform sowed doubt in the proven and approved science of vaccines while promoting the use of an unproven treatment for COVID-19. I don't know that Joe Rogan was promoting that use. He was talking about what he himself did. There are other questions that could be asked about some of the other information conveyed in that sentence, and you could look that up for yourself. A drug developed to ward off parasites in farm animals. Imagine being married to CNN. It was so boring. No, look, although it was essentially developed as a parasite thing, it is also used for human. Oh, okay, animal drug user. No, listen, I know that, but also it has been given in billions of doses have been given to humans. Yeah, bah, bah, no. Oh, CNN. It must be frustrating, and I wonder who they are married to. Stay to the end of the video to see what kind of marital bonds they have. The only thing CNN did wrong here was bruise the ego of a popular podcaster. Now, I bow to no one in my defense of the egos of popular podcasters, but I would say here that's a corporate jibe, isn't it? Hey, we're gonna burn you bad, baby. We're gonna burn you with the ego with our statement. Continuing with the article, the issue actually begins and ends with the integrity of CNN's content. I believe that's right. Remember, this is in the Washington Post, man. If we take Rogan's prescription claim at face value, and CNN hasn't challenged it, the network's coverage was slanted in some cases and straight up incorrect in others. In this instance, you don't have to endorse Rogan to abhor CNN's coverage of this topic. Well, it's good to hear that kind of coverage in a what you call a mainstream media resource. And we often look at mainstream media and try to find content within it that we feel is at least open to various potential outcomes. As you know, if you're a regular viewer of this channel, I'm on an ongoing journey of discovery. Oh, I thought this. No, you're wrong. You know, you read the comments, you see what people actually think. You get the benefit, the privilege of thousands, hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions, 4 million plus subscribers, all of the various opinions, insights, personal experiences. And as long as you're not pushing a particular agenda, and as far as I know, I'm not, then you have the advantage of changing and learning. And one of the people that I must say was an influence on me was Joe Rogan. From the times I've been on his podcast, I learned a lot. Now let's have a look at this montage, which I'd see it before on another YouTuber's video. You have a look at this montage of the relationship between just one pharmaceutical company and various broadcast outlets in your country, America.
Good Morning America is brought to you by Pfizer.
CBS Health Watch sponsored by Pfizer.
Anderson Cooper 360. Brought to you by Pfizer.
Every single degree of that 360 is sponsored by Pfizer, but we still have a really clear outlook when it comes to subjects related to Pfizer. Now, a lot of you, I know, when I say stuff about capitalism, particularly things that are anti-capitalism, you go, no, this isn't, well, the free market's a great thing. Now, let me use this example to further advance my argument. If you have a media organization that is to some degree controlled, and by controlled I mean financially dependent upon a particular organization, for example, obviously Pfizer. If Pfizer spend a lot of money with CNN, do you think that CNN are going to criticize Pfizer in the same way they would if Pfizer didn't spend a lot of money there? Do you have that kind of faith? And like, this probably doesn't apply to just CNN. There's probably numerous financial interests and numerous networks that are embedded within one another. In fact, the system itself is just various sets of these relationships interacting. That's why I figure like Joe Rogan is fascinating, because due to an anomaly, because of a technical advance, because of the internet, because of podcasts, because of his own personal endeavor, set of talents and various other things, you know, that you could list, he ain't gone through that channel. He's sort of whisked through the lucky sperm. He's not had to hit the prophylactic of corporate interest. He's not been stymied by the regulations and controls that usually would come along with that level of success. Now, this montage is just a visual. When I first saw this, I was awestruck by it. I couldn't believe it. This ain't new, but it's still shocking.
ABC News Nightline. Brought to you by Pfizer.
Making a difference. Brought to you by Pfizer.
Yeah, you know what difference they're making? Don't criticize Pfizer.
CNN Tonight. Brought to you by Pfizer. Early Start. Brought to you by Pfizer. Friday night on Aaron Burnett Out Front. Brought to you by Pfizer.
Aaron's one of the people. That stinking, dirty, non-Pfizer horse butt medicine that's just for horses and their dirty butts wouldn't be made by Pfizer. Pfizer are making their own version. That is a good drug. That is a good, reliable, decent drug.
This Week with George Stephanopoulos is brought to you by Pfizer.
This weather report brought to you by Pfizer.
Today's countdown to the royal wedding is brought to you by Pfizer.
The royal wedding's been Pfizer now. Why are Pfizer spending all this money? It's in order to create a positive association with Pfizer. So generally speaking, you feel positive about Pfizer. For at least as many examples as we have found for Pfizer sponsoring shows, you could find outcomes of various lawsuits around the opioid crisis in particular, where Pfizer don't come off looking so good, and many of those lawsuits, they paid off in bundles. The way that we feel about a company, an organization and their products is integral to financial and business outcomes. If you're not able to talk about that openly, freely criticize it and discuss it, that's censorship. You're living in a censored, authoritarian, dystopic culture. So now we can see why Joe Rogan's voice matters, why what Joe Rogan said matters, because inadvertently or otherwise, his words challenged an authoritarian telos towards the power of media, government, and their relationships with corporate sponsors. If you don't think there's a connection between those things, then that's up to you. This is just the way that I see this situation playing out.
And now a CBS Sports Update brought to you by Pfizer.
Meet the Press Data Download, brought to you by Pfizer.
This portion of CBS This Morning sponsored by Pfizer.
Just when you think Pfizer aren't going to sponsor another program.
On how to find the hidden sugars in the American family diet. Sponsored by Pfizer.
Anyway, listen, you can decide for yourself whether you think it's wrong for media organizations to perhaps carry an agenda that would, you could say, benefit outcomes favorable, perchance, to particular pharmaceutical or other entities. And you can decide for yourself whether you think there's a connection between the stance of particular media organizations and the kind of financial partnerships that they have. But once you've seen that bloody montage, it's like the scales fall from your eyes. Surely, don't they? But that's just what I think. What do you think? Do you think that Joe Rogan's words of like let a fox in the hen house or some other metaphor that you prefer? Do you think that Joe Rogan should be able to speak freely? Are you concerned about the relationships between big business and big media and government? Do you think there needs to be regulation? Do you think it needs to be broken down? Do you think it should be banned for pharmaceutical companies to make a profit, that they should operate within tight regulation so their focus is entirely on the health of ordinary people? Do you think it should be impossible for these kind of organisations to sponsor media organisations? Do you think media organisations should declare up front publicly, I mean they are there, every other word they utter is Pfizer, their relationships with corporate entities? Let me know in the comments below. Let me know all of your inquiries and thoughts. It's vital that we stay in connection because I know you know more than I do, that you can teach me so much about these things. Give us a little thumbs up, why don't you? Subscribe to my channel. Maybe go over to my Awakening Side channel as well. And sign up to my mailing list. It's just one click away and I'm going to be teaching you 12 ways that you can change your life today, altering your entire psyche using methods that I've come up with myself. No, they're really, really good techniques. If you enjoyed this video, have a look at this saucy little Susie. What a dirty little video that one is. Or perhaps have a glance at this one. Teach yourself a bit of meditation. Most importantly of all, stay free.